Hey guys, it's Laura from Lightning Cosplay. I'm super proud to finally show you the coolest thing I've ever created. Again, we got a commission request from CD Projekt, and this time they asked for something really special. We had the honor to bring the baby Botchling from The Witcher 3 to life. Definitely one of the saddest storylines in the game, but so well written, like nearly everything in the game. But I think let's just start with this special project. To save time, we came up with the idea to print the body of the Botchling and use this as a base for sculpting. Even when 3D printers have a very good print quality these days, especially resin printers, you still get much better textures when you sculpt it by hand. All parts were printed with our Zortrex M200 and our all-time favorite ABS filament. Definitely the weirdest thing we've ever printed. Every time we print big pieces like this, we add holes to the separated parts and add wooden dowels to make sure everything is glued together in the right position. As glue, we always use our self-made ABS glue. You can just make it by melting ABS leftovers with acetone. Of course, this only works with ABS, not with PLA. The seams didn't have to be perfect, this whole thing will be covered in clay anyway. I brushed on multiple coats of Monster Clay Medium. You can melt it in your microwave until it's liquid. After a few coats, the clay was thick enough that I could start smoothing everything out. For that, I used all kinds of loop tools and mineral spirit. Then I just started to define some parts, like the toes, and already added skin textures and wrinkles here and there. When I sculpt, I don't finish one area and then go on with the next. I constantly work on different areas at the same time. I think this makes it easier to stay concentrated and not getting bored while you work for too long on the same spot. The good thing is, I didn't have to worry much about if I accidentally add too many wrinkles. The Botchling had to be super wrinkly with a strong skin texture. For creating skin texture, there are some nice tricks. One is to use silicone stamps. You can buy them with different textures, and I really like to work with them. I just love how all the skin textures and wrinkles came out. As I already said, it's always best to sculpt something organic like this with all the textures by hand. It's difficult to get the same quality with 3D printing. For making the mold, we tried out something we've never done before. We wanted to do a matrix mold, but instead of doing it the traditional way, we 3D modeled and printed the hard shell. This worked out extremely good because we already had the 3D model of the body. To be honest, to explain how a matrix mold is made and how it works is kinda complicated, so I am just briefly giving you an impression how we worked on it. You basically fill up one half of the shell with clay and add holes for the registration keys. Then you close the shell. To fill up matrix molds, you need silicone with a low viscosity to make sure the silicone gets into every detail. I like to use Mold Star 15 from Smooth On. Another very important part is degassing the silicone before pouring it into the mold so you don't get any air bubbles. You pour the silicone into the half of the shell which is not filled with clay, and then wait until it's fully cured. Then you remove the part of the shell which is filled with clay, and you have your first half of your silicone mold. It's a quite time-consuming process, and you need to work very focused not to make any mistakes. Silicone is damn expensive, so you don't want to mess anything up. I was extremely nervous during the whole molding process because you only see if the mold was a success after you are done with all parts and can finally open it. Not only the mold making process itself was difficult, also the whole planning on how the mold will be separated and which part will be molded first and so on took us some time. Mostly we think we know what we are doing, but there's still the evil voice in your head that says, "Oh, something will go wrong and you have to start all over again." But then came the day where we were done with all parts and could finally open the mold. This moment was really nerve-wracking for me. All my doubts were for no reason. Of course, everything turned out more than perfect. I also made molds for the tongue and the umbilical cord. For that I used Moldstar 15 again. Here I decided to make simple block molds. They are easy to make, so you can't really fail on them. Only downside, you need a lot of silicone. After the first half is cured, you just remove the clay, clean everything, and then you can already pour the second half. The tongue and the umbilical cord were 3D printed, by the way. The molds turned out great, so I could already test out the silicone I wanted to use for casting. Since silicone likes to stick to silicone, you need a good amount of release spray, but not too much. I decided to use dragon skin, which I already used to make silicone bodysuits and prosthetics. It is very soft and stretchy, what is perfect for this project. To get the right skin tone for the botchling, I mixed different silicone colors and added a bit of red and blue flocking. First, I applied a few layers of silicone with a brush to make sure the silicone gets into all the details, especially the face was super important. I just built it up layer by layer. Here I also used a silicone foam. When I was done with the two halves of the body, I went on with the arms. I closed the arm mold while the silicone was still a bit runny, so the two halves could kinda melt into each other. Then I attached them to the body mold. I thought it could be a cool idea to place this flexible armature inside the silicone body to make the botchling posable, but spoiler alert, it didn't work out the way I was hoping. Finally, the mold could be closed and filled up with silicone. Gosh, we needed so much of it. We let it cure overnight and the next morning was the moment of truth. Again, I was so nervous if everything turned out good. It was not really an option to cast it again if it was a fail. But OMG, look at that hand, it's so creepy, I love it. So far everything looked good, also very nice butt. Here we have some very pretty baby feet. And then came the moment of truth, the face. Ah, look at her, she was perfect. Next, I had to trim off the seams. Trimming the seams is a super important step to prepare everything for the next step. Before I could start with patching the seams, I had to make sure there was no release agent left on the silicone. So the baby got its first bath. To patch the seams, I mixed the same silicone I used before and mixed it with a thickening agent, so it gets very paste-like. For smoothing it out, I use a solvent that works for silicone. Patching all seams took me a whole day. It needs to be done very patiently. You're basically just sculpting with silicone. You add silicone to the seam, smooth it with the solvent to blend it, and then carefully add skin texture. It's super important that you do the seam patching the day after you casted your piece. If you wait too long, it can happen that the silicone does not stick to each other anymore. Now comes the best part of this whole project, painting. But here I am painting silicone, which works a bit different. You can only paint silicone with silicone. No other paint will stick to it. I like to work with the Psychopaint system from Smooth On. You have the Psychopaint silicone as base and can tint it with all kinds of silicone pigments. When painting with silicone, you are spraying on very thin layers to build up the color. The whole painting process was a lot of fun for me. I don't often get the chance to paint a creepy silicone baby. I painted the front in one day, let everything set overnight and started to work on the back the next morning. As mentioned before, when you work with silicone, you can't wait for a week or so until you continue working on it. The more time passes by, it can happen that the silicone layers you add on top will not stick to the original piece and they can peel off. The tiny teeth were 3D printed and then painted. To glue them into the mouth, I used Silpoxy, which is a silicone glue. After the glue was cured, I gave the teeth their final touch. And I could also finally add the tongue. The eyes were 3D printed and then lovingly painted by hand. Ah, look at those super pretty eyes, not creepy at all. I coated them with epoxy resin for a realistic shine. Popping them in was oddly satisfying. The last little detail was adding the umbilical cord. And then our baby was done. All she needed now was a cozy home, or let's say a baby crib. We took old wooden fruit boxes and took them apart so we could use these already nicely weathered wooden boards. I can't say much about this whole process. Ralph did this while I was busy with other things. He even filmed everything by his own. Normally I do this. So I think he did a good job on filming it and of course on the coffin. The baby crib. Not gonna lie, I know I say this often, but for me personally, this was such a cool project. I love all kinds of creepy stuff, but I don't get the chance so often to create something like this. And I wish we could kept her for ourselves, but she's already in the CD Projekt headquarters and is in good hands, hopefully. It was so sad to give her away, but yeah. Anyway, I know you want to see the final reveal, so here she is.